Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. I am your co-host, Jamie Bateman, joined by my fellow co-host, Chris Seveny. Chris, how are you doing today?
Good, Jamie. How are you? It's Friday.
It's Friday. I think this is our fourth episode we've recorded this week, which is awesome. Get a few in the hopper.
Trying to get a little ahead because we know we're going to be attending some events in the upcoming months. So just want to make sure we've got a nice pipeline for all our listeners.
So I've gotten to see your smiling face, quite a bit this week, which is good. But today it's not about you or me. We have a special guest with us, Brent Bowers. Brent, I know Brent has done a lot in the real estate industry. He's done wholesaling, land flipping, all kinds of things we're going to get into. Brent, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm really good, Jamie. Thanks for having me, guys. Chris, Jamie, it's been a blast already, and we haven't even hit the record button.
Absolutely. So yeah, for the listeners out there, why don't you dive into your background for us, if you would?
Yeah, just a little bit about me. I was kind of talking before we got on here. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always had that itch, the drive to start businesses. I started a lawn and landscape company when I was in middle school. I bought a course when I was 18 years old to buy and sell notes, really just be a discount note broker to kind of almost like, just work the deal and get a little bit of a commission. Then I realized how expensive mail was and quit that. And so I was kind of a serial entrepreneur for a while. And something always drove me back to being in real estate. Got involved finally 2007 after taking like 16 or 17 seminars and maxing out my credit cards. Just totally was in education mode, and finally pulled the trigger in 2007. Got my real estate license because I thought I needed one to be a good investor. Then bought a house like a month later, and I'm in. And that's when I started taking action, taking massive and perfect action, and failing my way forward.
It's what you started saying, and then you're like, yeah. And in 2007, I just start cringing, like, uh-oh.
Well, that's why I brought in failing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Your middle school landscape business was probably more successful than the early starts of your real estate business from 2007 would be my guess.
That business is still going, that lawn and landscape company.
Is it really?
No more landscape.
Okay. Now, do you still own it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
My dad actually came out to work with me and invested in the company after I had graduated. 1 year after I graduated high school, I was like needing to hire somebody very badly because I was working like 7 days a week. And my dad's like, look, I'm ready to leave my job. He was building towers for a living and doing well with it, but just wanted to change. And he's still out there today, but I've gotten him into land. So I'm trying to get him to be done with it.
Well, we'll definitely transition into that. But real quickly, that's funny because I had a lawn and landscaping company. There were 3 owners back in the day, and I no longer own it, but it's blown up into this big landscaping company that we use now, which is really cool to see it over the years, kind of still,
that is amazing.
Experience growth. And then I know we were both officers in the military, so I feel like we have a lot in common. But yeah, so how did things go from, I guess, tell us a little more about your background.
Yeah. So, Chris said he cringed when he heard 2007. I thought things were going to blow up and do really well. I had also just gotten married in 2007, and we moved
up just the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
Knowing what I know now, I was in the perfect opportunity, but we don't know, if we could trade some things and know what we know now. I quit too soon, and I should have just stayed the course. But, we moved to the coast, moved to West Palm Beach, super expensive. I'm going to be a real estate rock star. I left my company completely. 2008 was happening. I'm beating the streets. And ultimately, I ended up just driving people around to rent houses. And I was maybe lucky if I made $300 in a week. And I think I burnt more in gas. Had to move in with my in-laws. Here I am, a grown man, almost 24 years old, had a business, have a real estate license, have a rental property, married, living with my in-laws. So it was quite an humbling experience. And now I'm paying credit cards with credit cards just to try and keep up. And I remember talking to my wife's grandpa. He was super successful guy in my mind. He introduced me to Jim Rohn, not personally, but his actual cassette tapes that I had to transfer to CDs so I can listen to these. But I took the advice that he gave me. He's like, join the military, go back to school, reset, and retire in the military with 20 years and you'll be set. And I'm an action taker. Like, that's all you got to do is just give me, like, there's two types of Army officers. There's the guys that plan and the guys that execute. I'm no planner. I just need to execute. So I executed. I went to the Air Force recruiter. They said, no, we don't want you right now. So luckily that recruiter said, hey, the Army will take just about anybody. Go next door.
Can you fog a mirror? Yes. Okay. You're in.
Yeah, I did. And guess what? I'm in basic training a couple months later, get through basic, then AIT, and I'm off to Afghanistan. So that went on for a little while, a couple deployments, and I finally get back to the United States in 2013. I was gone from about 2010 to 2013, and I still had that real estate itch. By this time, me and my first wife had separated. I was gone so much. She was like, I'm out of here. I'm done with this. So the Army selected me for active duty green and gold, where they select about, almost 200 soldiers a year to stay active duty, but go to school. Well, I bought the house next to the college that butted up to the college and rented out all the rooms and started AKA house hacking. I didn't know what that was called at the time, but making a fortune doing it, refinanced that house, bought a third rental by this time, and then just kept rolling it. And, started doing the houses, and then eventually stumbled into land. And here we are.
Well, first, thank you for your service.
Yeah, man, thank you.
So from that perspective and, going overseas, putting your life at risk for us. So what got you into land? You were house hacking. One of those things people find is, well, wait a second, I've got this house I'm living in and I've got people paying me left and right. Why wouldn't I keep kind of doing this or get more rentals? Curious what made you kind of flip the switch to land?
Yeah. So it's now 2015. The Army's moving me and my new wife. I just gotten married again to the woman of my dreams. And we're moving out to Colorado Springs to be stationed out at Fort Carson. And I purchased another property. So this was now my 4th rental. And this one was a triplex. And this one I had this, it was like literally just, there was squatters in it, all 3 units. And I spent almost $85,000 renovating it, repairing it, cleaning it. And I maxed out a Home Depot card, an Amex card, a SunTrust. At that time, it was SunTrust, a home equity line of credit. I don't even think SunTrust exists anymore.
Yeah.
PNC bought them, didn't they? Or was it BB&T, or I think BB&T bought them.
Yeah. Well, we paid that off. But I was like, I am massively broke. Oh, and I have a new baby. And we just bought a house in Colorado Springs as well. So I'm like, there is something wrong with this real estate business. People talk about how much money you make in it. I am like eating ramen noodles, but my tenants all have nice houses. And my wife's starting to get aggravated, like, because they're like, this is stupid. Like, what are you doing? Like, you are in debt and you're spending all your second lieutenant pay on the like these houses. So I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I started wholesaling houses. And, as an Army officer, we're working like 12, 13, 14-hour days. We're always in the field. We're always training. And you had to go and meet these sellers. And I was like searching for more answers. So I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I was like listening to podcasts, reading every book I possibly can, hiring coaches and mentors, and I heard about a guy that was buying land at crazy discounts and then turn around and like doubling his money overnight and or seller financing them. So I was like, I'm only focused on houses. What if I mailed land too? So I thought I was mailing the tax delinquent list for land. It was a pain in the butt. Like I had to scrub it. Ultimately, it was the list from the county that they were trying to sell the liens, the tax liens, but no one was buying them because it was like inefficient, raw, vacant land that was not buildable, not accessible. There was like issues with it. So I mailed like 687 postcards to these owners, these landowners, and my phone almost melted. Like it was just blowing up. These people were like, take the land. I don't care. And I'm just like, okay. So the first one I purchased, it went really well. The second one, I built a note, like I literally seller financed it, and I had a note of $400 a month coming in, and my paradigm shifted. I was like,
wait a second.
Amazing. Oh, and by the way, all my investment was out too in the first month. Not like my houses, like that's going to take me 30 years to pay off. But that's where,
So
that's how land came in.
maybe you can just quickly walk us through, maybe it can be that second one as an example, but how does, just quickly, what does a deal look like? You know, how does a typical deal, how's it structured?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this second parcel of land, I just made tons of mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing. I went and met the seller. I ran like a quick O&E, like owners and encumbrance, quick title search. I didn't purchase a title insurance policy. I do now, like on a lot of these. So the land cost me $500. It was like 4 acres just south of NORAD in Colorado Springs, not accessible. You pretty much, it was surrounded by state land. And I disclosed all that to my buyer. But I went and paid this woman $500. I was like, it's a no-brainer. It's land for $500. So I gave her the money. But as soon as I got home with this quick claim deed for this land, she deeded it to me right on her front porch. She'd already had a notary sign it, but her front porch was like bigger than my entire house still to this day. Like the woman was loaded. But long story short, I had a buyer off of Craigslist because I said, look, I'm going to do $500 down. That way I get my money back out of the deal, and $400 a month, because someone's going to take on the risk of this property getting ingress and egress, like legal access to it. So I got to make it like appealing to them. I had a buyer that night. He brought me the $500 cash. We did a contract for deed on this one, basically saying, if you pay me $400 a month for this
Chris
many
is getting
months,
excited.
yeah. And he literally brought me cash every single month. And we ultimately got better and better at these. We started like getting bigger down payments, so we had less defaults, but he paid it off. And this $400 a month changed my life because it's now covering my truck payment. And like, I figured, okay, I can do another one and I can cover my electric payment and then gas and then eventually maybe my mortgage.
And you had no money left in the deal, right?
None at all.
That's
None at
fantastic.
So what states are you doing this in now?
So we are in Florida, Colorado, Arizona, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Arkansas, all by accident. So because people find out about it and they send us deals.
If you ever get tired of chasing the money and collecting the payments, Jamie and I know somebody who can handle that for you in most of those states, by the way.
I would love to hear more about it. Absolutely.
Jamie and I started a servicing company because we deal a lot on the non-performing debt side, and got, I'd say, a little frustrated with a lot of the servicing companies and trying to do the workouts and stuff. So we ended up investing in a company that does that now. So Jamie and I try and do some shameless plugs once in a while for ourselves because we don't do enough of them. But
Chris and I are really bad at selling our own stuff, honestly, on the podcast. And so BuyFi Loan Servicing, check it out.
Say the name again.
Chris.
You kind of cut out on me.
Oh, BuyFi Loan Servicing.
BuyFi.
It's by investors for investors.
So how are you still typically, I'd say, getting your stuff from like the tax lists, or are you pulling from like ListSource or some of these other places to get lists of, you know, the vacant land, or just from that perspective? Then the other question is like, how do you find your sellers? Is it Craigslist or is it Facebook now? You know, because over the last 5-6 years, I would think the way you buy and sell, maybe not as much buy, but definitely the way you sell is probably continues to change based off of the algorithms of the internet. So just curious how that works.
You got it. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about how we get the list now. I don't only focus on the tax delinquent list anymore. That's such a small list, and it's really hard to scale it because you run out very quickly. I mean, there's places like you just said, Chris, ListSource, amazing place to pull lists. I pull the entire county list. So once I figured out, hey, it works on this, I ultimately expand and pulled the entire county list and kept mailing those. And I don't only do deals with people that are behind on taxes and out of state. I mean, there's people that live in the county that inherited the land, didn't know what the heck to do with it. And like, they're like, yeah, take it. Sometimes they'll seller finance it to me as well, and I can wrap it. Like, we're getting a piece of land right now at 0% interest, and I'm going to turn around and charge 12% interest to my buyer.
So
now, how do I find the buyers?
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask, because we had Russ and Joey from Wealth Without Wall Street on recently, and they do some land flipping as well, I believe, from the Land Geek. I think maybe you went through that program as well. But and what they were saying, they're not active in the land flipping business, it's more of a passive thing for them. But what they were saying is first place is neighbors, you know, as far as finding a buyer. Because, you know, not necessarily, not that the neighbors, you know, next to that land necessarily want to use the land or build on it or anything, but they at least want to control it oftentimes. So
Absolutely.
what more can you add to that as far as finding buyers?
Yeah, I mean, you just reminded me of one of the ways I found. I was about to say, I found my first 10 buyers on Craigslist, but that's wrong. That was in my mind. But you just reminded me about the neighbors, because I was talking about buying those non-buildable, inefficient lots. Like Colorado Springs, you need 5,000 square feet to build on. Well, I kept pulling these lots at like 4,500 square foot in my neighborhood. And like, I'm like, how in the world do I sell these things? So you know what? In the military, we had to move so much. And I had all these boxes in my garage and I didn't know what to do with them. So I would go and buy those like survey stakes, like where you can get 12 of them for $375 at Home Depot. And I would take this box, this huge, large box that the Army would provide us to move, and write on the back with a big Magnum Sharpie marker saying, land, must sell, will finance, my phone number. And I would sell it to the neighbors or someone driving down the street. And then Craigslist brought me so many buyers. And then I started putting stuff on buy sell groups in Facebook, buy sell trade, yard sale groups. And now you have to kind of get through a lot of like, is this still available? Garbage on there. But if you have like an autoresponder or a virtual assistant in Argentina that you're paying $5 an hour to help you with your land business, she responds to that, because most of the time people have the frequently asked questions, like the top 10 questions, and you just respond with it. And that's how I found most of my buyers in the very beginning.
Okay. So then how do you determine, once you find a buyer, how do you determine which deal you're going to create a note on versus just sell outright?
Yeah.
What factors go into that?
Yeah, it was really easy for me, Jamie. It just depended. Do I have the money in my bank account to buy this land, or do I need to get it under contract and assign this contract to a builder, to a developer, someone that has the cash? And ultimately I would assign one or two and then try and seller finance 3 or 4, because my whole goal, how people talk about their why? I never really understood that, but I had a massive why and I didn't even realize it. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to get out of the military. Like, my hands were cuffed. I was tired of it. I missed being enlisted. I hated being an officer. I hated always being gone and missing my son's life. And I didn't want history repeating itself on me. My first wife took off when I was in Afghanistan the second time because I was gone all the time. Like, I saw that. I had this negative thing in my mind that was going to happen to me again if I didn't change some things. So 8.5 years of military service, I might have been home 4 of those years. So I had a huge why to make $6,000 a month coming in every single month so I can put it in my packet to get the heck out. So that's ultimately, how it went. And I tried to seller finance every single one of them until I would run out of money, and then I have to flip one or wholesale it.
That makes sense.
So with this, on the ones that you seller finance, I'm curious if there's ever delinquencies, or like what your delinquency rate would be, and how have you handled that in the past?
Chris, that has never happened to me. Never once a delinquent.
Yeah.
So
delinquent, what?
In the beginning, like, I tried so many things. I was like, $1 down gets you the deal, paid $199 a month. Well, they can't, like, I learned that you have to collect a bigger down payment and a doc fee in the beginning to make sure they can afford that monthly payment. So in the beginning, I would say I probably took back 1 out of every like 8 or 9. Then it got a little better. Then it got about 8% default rate. And then it's just, it even lowered more from there, because, the bigger the down payment we get in the beginning and the doc fee. Now I found that if I can get them to put at least $1,000 down in the beginning, I'm probably not going to have a doc, or I'm probably not going to have a default. But let me just give you this as a disclaimer. I've only been doing this since 2016. So I don't have a lot of time to track these numbers, I should say. So I mean, things could change in a couple of years from now. Here's the cool thing is there's no debt on any of this land. So if I have to take it all back, I'll just resell it. And a lot of it, I'm already profitable when I do take it back, which that's nothing to brag about. Bad things happen to great people, but we'll restructure the loan. I took one that was at $399 a month down to $80 a month. And that guy was like over the moon. He wouldn't even communicate with me at first because he's like, yeah, just take the land. He was embarrassed. And I remember him saying, I can't believe you guys did this. And I'm like, dude, like, we're people. Like, I'm not a bank. Just communicate. And most of the time they communicate. We've really gotten good at our systems. I would say it's probably maybe 1 out of 13 or 14 now that we do that we actually have to take back.
So when you do, oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was going to say, I know some people who have invested in land like that, or they'll buy the delinquent notes. And, one of the things that, makes it actually, most people think, well, there's not much you can do with it because it's vacant land and nobody's going to want it. But on the flip side, typically the people that had owned it at that point in time, they don't live on a vacant land. They have property elsewhere. And if they default on your vacant, a piece of vacant land, you could get a judgment against them that would attach to their property if it was a type of strategic default in many states. So I know some people have also done things like that in the past as well, because, the debt's owed and they try and re-securitize it from that perspective. But
I didn't even know we could do that.
You've heard of people doing that?
What's that? Yes, I have.
Asking for a friend.
I just know people who have done that.
So when you do this, like the seller finance notes, is it all, this may sound like a basic question, but is it always a land contract that you do?
No, not specific, not necessarily. I will say, and now that I know how to sell a note, and thanks to you, Jamie, for helping me out with that. I found that note investors prefer to have a deed of trust and a promissory note. So I don't only do land contracts. So a lot of times realtors will bring us a buyer, or I'll sell it on the MLS. Well, that needs to go through a closing table, and the title company will write me a deed of trust and a promissory note. And we generally try and get at least a minimum of $5,000 down. More the better. The more the better.
Yeah.
But then I transfer the land to them, transfer the deed. And if they don't pay, I foreclose. Now, I have never had to foreclose on any of those.
Gotcha.
Those have been
That's
amazing
good.
deals.
Yeah. Now I was just curious because, Chris and I do buy land contracts. I've tried to get away from them, but I can't, I can't quit it. But
like an ex-wife,
compared to a note and mortgage, but I think that's good. I've worked with some other kind of seller finance note sellers, if you will, who I've tried to, help them add value to the note itself. And if you're in the future want to sell it, some things that can add value, like you said, I mean, a high down payment is obviously, is huge. And then, I know with land, you don't necessarily have to follow the same CFPB regulations. So you don't necessarily have to use a licensed servicer, but that can add a lot of value for me as a buyer, because it's like, if you do have to go foreclose, and there's not a real detailed pay history, that can be a problem. Everything is state dependent.
So Jamie, did you help him write a note?
I didn't help him write a note. I just looked at a few that he has. And yeah,
because with notes, you can also roll into that agreement that the borrower pays that servicing fee. So Brent could actually put in the contract, hey, you're going to pay an extra X amount of dollars per month to the company, collect the payments, and then he doesn't even have to chase money down ever again from that perspective, and just watch it hit his bank account. So
I mean, the other thing you run into,
and that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for as a passive investor, because, like there's this argument, like, is this passive? Is this really passive? Is this mailbox money? No, it's not mailbox money. I want it in my bank account money, and I don't ever want to talk to the buyer of the land. And that's why I love it. Like, the last time one of our 116 note payers called me about a leaking toilet or a leaking roof, or no, they don't call because there's no toilets or roofs on it. So the less we have to do, the better. So the note servicing, the BiFi loan servicing sounds really
exactly. And then obviously some other things like having an independent BPO, and you see some shady BPOs in the seller finance world. I'll just say that.
Well, what you typically will find is on seller financing, this is just mine, and this has nothing to do with land. This is actually more property, is, the property will be taken back by the lender, and the property's worth, call it $50,000. They'll turn around, put it on a seller finance deal and get like $3-4 grand down, but the sales price is like $90,000. And, per CFPB,
but they have a BPO to back it up.
Well, no, what they usually do is they actually use the reverse. They'll use like a rental, like almost like a commercial cap rate, and say, oh, this could get this much in rent. So, which makes zero sense. And sometimes you do have to be careful, if you do a lot of that for predatory lending and so forth. But, that's what you typically see. And then like land, you're right. There's no, it's not a resident. So it goes by different laws or rules. But when people do that, then it's like, I'll look at the note and I'll be like, this property was for sale for 8 months at $50,000 and didn't sell. And now you're saying it's worth 90. You didn't do anything to it. I'm like, from a note perspective, I'll probably give you 25 or 30, even if it is performing, just because of what the value is. And the risk of the default is significant on these. And Jamie and I, know some sellers who that's their business model is they buy a lot of these REOs and sell them on owner finance. And then all of a sudden we'll see on a website 6 months later, it's being sold as a non-performing note because a borrower made 3 payments. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, oops, from that perspective. And you look at the history, and it's the same thing. They couldn't sell it for 50. They owner finance it for 80 or 90. And then the person defaults, but then they're still trying to get 50,000 for it. And then it's, I'm sitting there thinking, kind of doesn't make sense because of, a vacant or somebody in a property that's not paying, is actually, even though real estate's appreciating over time, these are actually probably depreciating because you got taxes, you're going to get stuck with utility bills, most likely, or liens. And then borrowers typically don't leave the place spit shined on their way out the door, to say the least. So,
well, and that you just highlighted some of the advantages of focusing on land, right?
Yeah, you're not dealing with people on the property.
Exactly.
You're dealing with wildlife, if that. So
right. So Brent, what's your maybe your portfolio or your business look like today? What are things looking like today? What's 2022 have in store for you?
Yeah, 2022, we're looking at bigger deals. We kind of broke our teeth in last year. We bought a $1.2 million piece that we are building 38 townhomes on.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Pretty much raised the capital with that. Just people that were in my local meetup group, and we just raised the funds and found a developer. We're doing that. And then, the passive income, I love it. I absolutely love it. We have like I said, a little over 116 notes right now. That's still moving for us. And it's so easy to scale that. The machine is already built. We've already got the team building it. And those continue to increase, but we're currently looking at another 36-acre development in Florida to put RV park and site pads on for more of a commercial, and basically raising the funds to do that right now as well. So it's amazing. It's like these little, like that first lot I did was $285. If you would have asked me if I would be spending like $4 million to buy land, just a few short years later, I would have just never even dreamed this.
That's wild. That's crazy. So what does the team look like? You mentioned virtual assistants. What's your business look like from an organizational standpoint?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, like you show me, and just for your listeners, you show me a business owner that's doing everything on their own. I would say that guy has bought themselves a job, and they're going to go crazy. Like I couldn't do any of this without my amazing team. I've got 2 virtual assistants in the Philippines. And as I'm saying this, like if anybody's listening to this, they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm just by myself. Well, it starts with one person. And that first person, I hired her name is Jen, in 2016. And it was because I was talking about how Jamie, I went to the field and I just sent out a lot of mail, and they take my cell phone. And I'm like, well, it's battlefield operations. You don't have cell phones in the mountains of Afghanistan. Okay. Well, I just sent out about $5,000 in mail. Who's going to answer this phone call?
Right.
So I hired someone off of Nextdoor. Actually, it's a Nextdoor app, your neighborhood app. She was down the street. Hired her to help me take phone calls. She had already had a real estate license, thank God. And then basically we haven't separated since, and we've just grown into another acquisition manager, Chrissy. She helps us. She also helps run our office. And then we have 2 virtual assistants in the Philippines, 3 people that also are in Colorado Springs with us now interning. It's amazing, the opportunity. It's like a lot of people want to get on a speeding train that's already built. And I wish I'd have been smart enough in the beginning to go and work for someone. I just was a seminar junkie and taking all these courses. And I don't even know if those guys were doing real estate, honestly, but
Right. Well, you're also an action taker, it sounds like. So I don't know how much patience you would have had working for somebody else, but I don't know. you could answer that, but that's really fantastic. It's just the growth you've experienced and the different types of investing that you've done, different strategies you've applied. Sounds like you're really creative and just figure it out as you go, but you've built something pretty incredible.
I was gonna say, what I like about it too is you continue to expand and adjust your business, but stay kind of with that core of, hey, I got the land, but now I'm going to go build townhouses, or I'm going to do, motorhome park pads, or, along that lines where it sounds like your acquisition strategy is like, hey, I got this down. I know what I'm doing. But now I can take that and not only just turn around, sell it owner financing, you're finding other avenues or paths to increase scale and grow your business, whether you're teaming up, like you said, on this 38 townhome development. Like, that's awesome, from that perspective. I used to work for a company that would do that a lot, where they get the land, and if it wasn't suitable for what they build, they would partner with them. And one of the things they did, just FYI for you to know too, is they may sell it to that developer, but they'll sell it by the lot, but they'll strike a deal with the developer at, not only want to sell it by a lot, but if you sell it for more than X or Y, I get a kicker. Yep. So sounds like you familiar.
We're learning.
Familiar. Yeah. So it's just some of the little tidbits of, if people are a little wary about the deal, it's like, hey, I'll give you a base amount for the lots, but hey, I get a kicker if these sell for this, above a certain thing. And that typically ends up, at first you're like, but you typically end up doing better than you would have from that perspective. Just wanted to kind of mention that. And it doesn't look like you're going to be slowing down anytime soon. It looks, you still got that, definitely can tell you still got that fire. The drive. So that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's I pray that the Lord lets me continue to have that drive for a very long time. But yeah, that's so amazing that you just said that, because that's kind of what it ultimately worked out to, Chris, is we're selling the lots on a basically build basis with the developer. And this is the first one we ever did. So it's like our investors are doing really well. We put the whole thing together, and my syndication attorney's like, you could have collected a fee. You should have taken more of a percentage for management. You've spoiled these guys. Don't ever do this again. But it's all good, because now I have partners, rather than them looking at me as like, well, you guys are getting more because you're the manager. So it's just amazing. Like, I have a friend named Eloy. He used to come to my meetup in Colorado Springs, and he's like, just doing deals with friends. And ultimately that's what we're doing. And it's just, in real estate, it's really easy. You either buy low and sell it for a little higher, or buy it and then sell it for a profit, or value add. There's really only two things. And the one way I value add is by providing these seller financing, these notes. Like, how do you see all these Americans driving these brand new cars? It's because we got GM, we got credit, we got lending institutions giving people the ability to make payments, because we think, how much will it cost each month? And that's ultimately what drives it.
So it's interesting you mention that, because my wife is from a foreign country where you can't get pretty much credit. So, it keeps everything much lower in value, but, basically, or it's more haves and haves nots, because, that GM still costs 20 grand and the average salary is only 15. Right. But two things that kind of stuck out at me during this podcast as well that you mentioned, and I'm actually speaking at a conference coming up, and I was talking about how long it takes to scale your business, and kind of like the Rome wasn't built overnight. And a lot of people get into real estate and they get frustrated after like 3, 6, or 9 months. You started in 2016, I believe. So, basically 6 years ago, and, it took off. So my question is to see if our point's proven, Jamie, how long did it take you before you kind of turned profitable, out of curiosity?
Well, I mean, can we say I really started in 2016? I really kind of started
in 2007. Yeah. But how long did it take you, I'd say, just in the business to get profitable, out of curiosity?
I would say, because I started back up again in really 2013, probably profitable about 2016, 17 maybe.
Several years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little teaser for Chris's presentation, but yeah, it's, and people are so impatient, and I get it. I want to make money too, right? But it takes a
Society
long time and a
today.
lot of work. Yeah,
Society
instant
today is like
gratification.
instant gratification. But
Mhm.
now you look at when over those years, and again, like that first year you make a little bit, then all of a sudden a little bit more. And all of a sudden it's like the balloon pops and it's like,
Mhm.
holy shnikes, like, wow, this is like all that
Yeah,
hard work finally pays off. But it finally, you get to a point where you continue to grow and expand your business. And then finally it's like, it pops. And then it's like, you just like moved up a complete another notch. And now it's like, okay, now I want to move up another notch, but you're already at a place that's like, this is awesome. So
yeah. And the other
and
thing I
that is
want to point
awesome.
out, the other thing is like, and I try to reiterate this on the podcast, because it's real easy for the listener to think, oh, Brent has done land flipping, wholesaling, house hacking, rental properties. He's now developing and building. And it's like, it ties to your point, Chris. It's not all that didn't happen in 2021. This took a long time. So what I'm getting at is, it's not that for a month you tried land flipping and then the next month you tried this. You built, like Chris said, you built a specific strategy. You got really good at that. And then you're like, all right, you
And he
moved on, you
stuck with
added
it.
another, you stuck with it. You didn't, yeah, exactly. You didn't leave that behind, but now you've added another tool to your tool belt. And so this didn't happen in 2021. This happened over a long period of time, but now you can do a lot. It sounds like you've got multiple streams of income. I know you have coaching as well, I think. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we picked up coaching about a year and a half ago, thanks to Tom Kroll with Wholesaling Inc. He was like, you really got to start teaching people what you're doing with land. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm ready. I'm still really new at it. I had all these limiting beliefs. I was like, people are going to take me seriously. Maybe only I can do it, like imposter syndrome. And
Right.
he's like, you're already teaching people for free. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to your point. Like, how long does it take a doctor to be a doctor, or a surgeon to be a surgeon, or attorney to be an attorney? Like
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Years. I mean, 10 years for a surgeon. Like my neighbor, like she went to school for 10 years. And what I really like is I make a lot more money than her. And but I didn't have to go to school for that long.
Right.
But if you look from 2007 to 2017, that was kind of my school process. And yeah, I've been broke. I've been behind on payments. I almost got foreclosed on. Like a lot of crap happened during that time, but the road to success is through the gutter, and it built me as who I am today. It showed me, and then I got humbled in the military and basic training at 24 years old as an adult that had a business and a real estate license and a rental, and I'm in basic training as an E1. Like,
I was 27, 28 in basic training, but
oh, dude, man, I don't feel bad now.
So yeah. So I was going to ask. So this is the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast. Can you think of a good deed that's you've done through your investing?
Well, I didn't have an idea until now. Two things, if you don't mind. Like we talked about, people defaulting. I've been able to show people how to sell their land and make a profit before they let it go back to us.
Nice.
Because it's like, we've already been profitable. Why not teach them how to sell it and put some money in their pocket? Number two, my acquisition manager, Jen, she just paid off her house. Like she had two properties. One was her cabin in the woods that she lives in now in Colorado. And then she had a duplex, and she just was able to renovate and flip that duplex. And she found all this by that little post on the Nextdoor app. She's now completely debt free. She went on vacation today for the first time in about 5 years. So I feel like I had a part in that. Just seeing her completely debt free.
Oh, that's awesome.
Taking care of your employees, it's always very important, especially in today's society. With everything that's been going on and stuff, it's very difficult to find good people. And if you find them, you want to make sure you can stick with them and hold on to them, because the cost to, I'll say, train. And, I know Jimmy's had some challenges recently with some VAs, and even and again, it's a VA that overseas is much more affordable than here in the States, but the time and effort still of your own time to work through all that can be challenging. But what I'm proud of, and again, Jamie and I kind of go back and forth sometimes, and we talk about our horror stories where, yes, at times we do have to foreclose, but at the end of the day, goal is always to try and keep that person in the home or come up with a win-win situation. And like I've got one right now, which I'll talk about on my good deed. You try and work with them, and that's awesome. That like if somebody's kind of having a little trouble with the land, like you said, you might restructure the deal from 300 down to $80, or basically say, hey, let me help you try and sell this or whatever it is, just so they're not getting hammered from that perspective. So good to hear.
Yeah,
so true.
So how about a note and bolt? You have a nugget of wisdom you can drop for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, take it from my experience for that listener, like just trying to figure out how the heck to get started. Like, this might sound easier. You might hear all these income streams, but it took a heck of a lot of work. Like I talked about being on base 13 hours a day. Okay, I had to be there at 6. When did I have time to build my business, to get out of the military, to be home with my family, so I can have financial freedom and time freedom and geography freedom and do what the heck I want, rather than be told what to wear and where to be every day. So I had to time block. Like, you have to time block and get the crap done. Like this morning, I got up at 4 a.m. I still do what I did back in 2015 when I was in the military, and I had to write 20 videos for my YouTube channel. That sucked. I only got 6 done.
That's because Jen's on vacation. That was your mistake. You let her go.
Yeah. Well, thank God Jen buys all the houses, because I'm not a good closer. I'm like, if someone yells at me, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just leave now. But Jen should take the punches. So you got to find, like Chris was saying, like I only find good people. I only attract good people. Now, have I found bad people? Yes, but I wasn't who I am today. And one of those bad people that was ripping me off, she was one of my cold callers. I look at the positive side, because she got me a 19-unit apartment complex.
Oh, there you go.
So, that's my nut and bolt. You got to time block. You got to shut everything off, your phone, your email, and just do the task at hand.
It's funny, because when people say, when do you have time to do this? I say, when people are playing Wordle, which I don't know what that is, but I just see it on Facebook all day long when I go online, or, when they're watching, I joke, like Grey's Anatomy, and I don't even know if the show's still on, but it's been on for like 20 years. And the last time I think I watched TV with that on it was like McDreamy or whatever his name was, probably like McSteamy from like 20 years ago or whatnot. But yeah, that's what you have to do is, you don't sit in front of the TV, don't sit in front of all these other distractions. Educate yourself. I have Audible on my phone. I'll listen to books, take notes, or in the evening, if my wife's sleeping, I'll spend some time to, sit down. I'm a zero inbox guy for my email. So I make sure every night, emails down to 0, and I'll put things in the to-do tasks. And like you said, it's time blocking is really, really powerful from that perspective. So Jamie,
go ahead. Well, yeah, actually I'll use it as my note and bolt. In the military, they teach you backwards planning, right? And so it ties into what you're talking about, Brent. It really helps you to kind of, you look forward, and you said you weren't the best planner necessarily, but I'm sure you do this in your business. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., right? Well, what do you have to accomplish to get there? And then backwards plan. So don't start, and Chris, I know you do this as well, but don't just start doing, without thinking of where you're trying to go, and without planning how much time that's going to take. So it really gets to the time blocking and appreciating the time we have. Each hour in the day is really precious. Yeah. But I would say backwards planning is my note and bolt, and that the listeners can take away. What's yours, Chris?
Well, it's funny, because we call it in construction pull planning. So same thing, you start with the date and pull it back. And then we have, one called SIPs. And honestly, I was just trying to find it really quick, what SIPs stand for. And it just slipped my mind what it is. But basically each one's like a structured independent project, where like each task. So, I work for
structured income planning system.
No, that's not what it is.
Oh, okay.
But no, what you do is you sit in a room, and for example, everything in construction has to go one by the other. So you go to the framer, okay, how many guys and how many days you need? And he's like, okay, I got 5 days. And you literally put Post-its 5 days. Okay, Mr. Electrician, you're going to go run all your wiring through the walls. When can you start 2 days afterwards? Yes, I have 5 days. And you put that and you basically just map everything out with that end in mind. If it doesn't hit it, okay, how can we shift or how can we move? And basically it's kind of, probably very similar to, the military where things are very regimented. If you run a construction schedule like that, it's very similar. But my note and bolt is, kind of back to, working with borrowers. I have a borrower right now who has not paid in probably like 15, 16 months. So we had to start, the legal process just to get, typically it's the best way to get somebody to come back to the table because they, avoid communication because of embarrassment, whatever the case may be. But, you have to kind of force their issue. And then, they came back to the table and now we're offering some type of modification to the loan, which we're trying to now look at and, come up with a plan that fits their needs and budgets. But one of the things when you're looking at a modification, typically the borrower gives you all their income information. And I think we all do this. We all underestimate how much we spend.
Yes.
And, from that perspective, and when they fill out these forms, a lot of these people are on, Social Security or, they're not making, $250,000 a year. So you'll look at it. And again, a cell phone bill for, somebody worth $1 million or somebody, making 25 grand a year is the same. Gasoline's the same. Groceries are the same. So just don't take what they say for grant, and run with it. Take a look, because they'll give you your bank statements, look at it. But try and help them and say, look, you say you can afford this, you really can't, and I'm not saying this to, basically, force any type of foreclosure and stuff. I want to create a plan that works for everybody. Because if you come back and say, yes, I can afford $500 per month, but your bank statement only has $1.72 in it, which is amazing sometimes how borrowers can balance a checkbook just above zero. It blows my mind, by the way, much better than I could do. But, you want to try and work with them and come up with some type of solution at the end of the day that's in everybody's best interest, not just your best interest.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So Brent, as we wrap up here, any final words? And as you go down that route, just let us know how people can reach out to you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Chris, you just had me thinking because it's time for me to go through my credit card bills and our bank statement for our business because there's something called phantom charges that come up. And I hope that a business owner hears this, but you've got to look at those things at least once a quarter. And that's probably not enough, honestly. But we just went through the other day and we found that we were getting charged almost like $6,000 a month for random things that were not even working in our business. One was like Google ads that hadn't given us like any revenue in like almost a year. Another one was another service, and these KPIs, these key performance indicators, like weren't showing a positive, like they were in the negative. So you got to get rid of that stuff, or those phone lines you don't use anymore. Like business owners, we could be paying tons of money on these charges. You just made me think about that with your borrower. So I digress.
But point. It's software because I actually just did that. I do the same thing every quarter. I'll go through and I'll be like, I don't use this anymore. Like, and it's on and it's on the auto every year refresh. So I'm like, you know what? I'll cancel it. Boom, gone.
I think,
get rid of it.
And for entrepreneurs, it's for entrepreneurs and business owners. I'll speak for myself. It's boring to look at expenses,
it
right?
Is.
And budgets, right? I'd rather focus on income and
revenue.
Exactly. But yeah, that's a great way to be profitable. It's critical. So yeah, Brent,
how people reach out to you?
Yeah, I launched a YouTube channel about 8 months ago. If you go to YouTube, go to Brent Bowers or search Brent Bowers on YouTube. That's probably the easiest, fastest way. I'm on Instagram, Brent L. Bowers. So there's
what type of people are you looking to connect with? In other words, passive investors, land flippers, wholesalers. Who would you like to connect with?
Well, I've been shouting from the rooftops about what I've built with this land company, how it's given me financial time and geography freedom by buying American land. Like what more freedom can you have than buying American land? I teach people how to do this. If anybody's interested in that, head on over to thelandsharks.com, thelandsharks.com. Schedule a call. We'll see what your goals are. If you could build see like this, building something like this would benefit from you. We're also raising capital for that RV park. So, I mean, this is just, there's so much opportunity. I'm still a land investor. I'm still a practitioner. Yes, I coach as well. I love doing it because I've created several millionaires now and business owners. And if you would ask me that when I was struggling in 2008, if I was going to be somebody that taught people how to be a business owner and be a millionaire through real estate, like I would have never even dreamed this was possible.
That's fantastic. Chris, any final words?
I'm good. It's an awesome episode. I've taken a bunch of notes afterwards. If you don't mind sticking on for 2 seconds, Brent, I do have a few questions for you. But yeah, my brain's like I've got stuff going through like that came up yesterday that like I'll tell Jamie later on. He's gonna be like, "Where do you come up with this crazy stuff?"
I'm never surprised anymore.
Yeah, I always have to run it by my attorney though. That's the first thing I always joke about is I run it by my attorney because some of this, like I had this one idea of, well, why couldn't I like on a note like keep the lot and just lease the land, kind of, from that perspective on a house. And he's like, yeah, no, they got rid of that like 50, 60 years ago. Now on mobile home, if it's for mobile home parks and stuff, you can do that. But I'm like, hey, I own this house. I foreclosed on it. Why can't I just lease the land and keep the land and then lease the house to somebody on like a 99-year lease and stuff. He's like, yeah, no, that pretty much got rid of in most communities now. And they would pretty much a lot of times consider it predatory in a lot of states that they don't, allow it, especially if the property's fixed with a basement from that perspective. But I was like, damn, because I'm thinking, oh, Pennsylvania has oil rights and stuff, but go ahead, Jamie.
One of the challenges in working with Chris is that
squirrel.
Yeah, well, I think we're full steam ahead over here, and he's like, "Oh, that was yesterday. That I'm not doing that anymore."
I'm still doing it, but I'm doing these other 7 things along with it.
Forgot to tell me about it, but anyway, just giving you a hard time. Brent, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. This was really, really good. And to our listeners out there, please give us a high rating and review. Give us good feedback if you like what you hear. It does help us quite a bit. And Chris, we put in for a, was that podcast thing? Can you mention that?
Yeah. So on one of the websites I'm a part of, it was actually Racket, Racket, that app, yeah. the Racket app that, came out recently, and it's more of an audio, like ping-ponging back and forth, essentially. They're trying to help podcasters out. So they posted to everyone who's on the site, hey, if you have a podcast, we want to giving out like $100,000, and I think it's like $5,000 increments to help influencers or people in the space to basically give them some money to kind of, continue to grow their podcast or grow their network. So, we applied for that. So if people are interested, make sure
put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes, as well as, join our Facebook group, the Notes and Bolts from the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. And I've also got it pinned there.
Perfect. Brent, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm joining the Facebook group right now.
There you go.
Cool.
And to our listeners, don't forget to go out and do some good deeds. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.